February the 19th, 1947, describing Byrd's arrival over the polar extremities at 1000 hours. We are crossing over the small mountain range and still proceeding northward as best as can be ascertained. Beyond the mountain range is what appears to be a valley with a small river or stream running through the center portion. There should be no green valley below. Something is definitely wrong and abnormal here. We should be over ice and snow. To the port side are great forests growing on the mountain slopes. Our navigation instruments are still spinning, the gyroscope is oscillating back and forth. This narrative, according to proponents of a hollow earth theory, indicates Byrd's astonishment at finding a cavernous opening over the pole, where a lush valley existed, heated by a sun found within the planet's interior. Admiral Byrd continues, writing that he can see animals in the valley, among them a living specimen of a woolly mammoth. Eventually, after landing, the Admiral and his company are confronted by several men who take him before an entity known as the Master. It is in the presence of this individual that we begin to see striking similarities to the kinds of reports made by contactees and alien abductees from over the decades. We shall not long delay your mission, and you will be safely escorted back to the surface and for a distance beyond. But now, Admiral, I shall tell you why you have been summoned here. Our interest rightly begins just after your race exploded the first atomic bombs over Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Japan. It was at that alarming time we sent our flying machines, the Virgil raids, to your surface world to investigate what your race had done. That is, of course, past history now, my dear Admiral, but I must continue on. You see, we have never interfered before in your race's wars and barbarity, but now we must, for you have learned to tamper with a certain power that is not for man, namely, that of atomic energy. Our emissaries have already delivered messages to the powers of your world, and yet they do not heed. Now you have been chosen to be witness here that our world does exist. Thus, Byrd, according to this esoteric document, was made a sort of emissary to the world above. He goes on to brief the President the following month at the Pentagon, after which he is ordered not to speak of his experience as a sort of security measure, hence explaining his strange silence on this incredible matter during the remainder of his lifetime. Had anything so extraordinary ever really happened? Could it truly have been kept secret for so long? Interestingly, my own introduction to allegations of Byrd meeting strange beings while visiting the Antarctic came from an odd story shared with me by a friend, rather than any alleged secret diaries or other fabled texts. According to the story my friend told, a family member of his who had known a member of Byrd's expedition had told stories of blue-skinned people from underground that were encountered by Byrd and his company. This odd tale remains somewhat in keeping with the aforementioned account of an underground race of beings led by an esoteric master. On the other hand, it differs greatly from the sort of theories held by some UFO buffs, who allege that none other than escaped Nazis had taken refuge at the southern pole, along with their curious saucer aircraft. The latter of these two scenarios, though widely accepted as a conspiracy theory, points toward one final shocking piece of testimony. Allegedly, Byrd was said to have made a series of cryptic comments during an interview with International News Service correspondent Lee Van Atta aboard the USS Mount Olympus, which later appeared in the Wednesday, March 5, 1947 edition of a Chilean newspaper called El Mercurio. Admiral Byrd declared today that it was imperative for the United States to initiate immediate defense measures against hostile regions. The Admiral further stated that he didn't want to frighten anyone unduly, but that it was a bitter reality that in case of a new war the continental United States would be attacked by flying objects, which could fly from pole to pole at incredible speeds. Admiral Byrd repeated the above points of view, resulting from his personal knowledge gathered both at the North and South Poles, before a news conference held for International News Service. What can be made of this strange report? The newspaper in question, El Mercurio, is no doubt a real publication, even believed to have later served as a CIA front organization for a while during the 1970s. However, there is little data available online to support the validity of the Mercurio article in question, save a few scant sources that already deal with ufological interpretations of Byrd's exploits. If the documents can be proven factual, one can only guess what kind of perceived threat prompted Byrd to make such claims during the interview it contained. Had some kind of danger actually existed in the southernmost extremities of Antarctica just after World War II? If so, what was the nature of this threat, and could it have dealt with carryovers from Nazi Germany, as some UFO researchers have already speculated over the years? If this were indeed the case, our knowledge base pertaining to the UFO mystery might have to be refashioned entirely, and their presence may also reveal a greater threat than we once realized. Then again, here we may also find more mundane explanations for the mysterious early withdrawal during Operation He Jump. For instance, the onset of inclement weather had caused a variety of issues, particularly with aircraft, by late January of 1947. One dramatic example of this included a sudden downwind that literally swept a helicopter in mid-takeoff directly into the ocean water, leaving a narrow window of opportunity for the pilot to escape and moments later be rescued. Another interesting point can be made about the reporters who boarded the USS Mount Olympus, the same who had gathered Byrd's testimony about the bitter reality pertaining to flying objects in the area. It is known, for a fact, that 11 international press representatives had been present on board the ship, and as their dispatches were sent along from their icy southern stronghold, a good bit of exaggeration had occurred. Exaggerations occur in several areas, whether paranormal or in everyday life. With diet plans, for example, the information is limitless from calorie counting to Medifast coupons. It is up to the individual to find their own truth. For instance, Antarctic explorer Paul Sipple later noted that the reporters aboard the USS Mount Olympus had overblown claims from Byrd's expedition pertaining to the so-called Bunga's Oasis, a lake area found to have uniquely warm temperatures, around 30 degrees, and a variety of algae growing within. Byrd later described the location as a land of blue and green lakes and brown hills in an otherwise limitless expanse of ice, and that his crew had seemed to have dropped out of the 20th century into a landscape of thousands of years ago when land was just starting to emerge from one of the great ice ages. There were, of course, no reports of mammoths or flying saucers mentioned at this point, although Byrd would later call the discovery by far the most important, so far as the public interest was concerned, of the expedition.